I'm Matt. This is Fresh FM. We're currently broadcasting out of our Nelson studio down at Founders Heritage Park. Now, I'm joined in the studio at the moment by Patrick Vanderbert from GeoVital. Good morning, Patrick. How are you doing?
Good morning, Matt. Thanks for inviting me.
Look, that's absolutely not a problem. I saw an email come through and I've got to say the contents of it were quite interesting, so I thought we'd get you in to have a bit of a talk.
I appreciate that.
So GeoVital. Obviously a company that's been around for a while, and I think you aim to create healthier environments for people.
We are originally a naturopathic health clinic based in Austria with a 35-year history. And the whole story of GeoVital basically started when a family member was diagnosed with a cancer, which was basically the doctors were giving up on. And Werner Hahnen, who started GeoVital, had a bit of an atypical response to that. Instead of just being angry, he organized a symposium, invited 40, 50 people of complementary and alternative health who had anything to say about cancer, invited them to this event and said, please come together, talk to each other, come up with ideas. I need a solution for my wife. And so this happened, and little mastermind groups were formed, and solutions were worked on. And Rosita Hahnen is now in her late 70s, so that all worked perfectly. But it was the beginning of this clinic being set up. And, we do wonderful things with natural therapies. But, the underlying, I think we inevitably bumped into was that the environment that we live in, and more specifically sleep in, when we sleep, that's when our body actually rests and repairs and regenerates. When you have a flu, where do you want to go? You want to go to sleep. Your body knows. And so the body is amazing at healing itself. But the average bedroom, there's a lot of disturbances or burdens that prevent this from working really well. And that's what we specialized in. We investigated, what can we change in the bedroom to make that healthier, and what has the biggest impact on the work we do in the clinic. So that's how this all started, and we're now expanding beyond Europe and the German languages to the English countries, Australia, New Zealand, North America, finding a lot of people that end up finding us and being delighted that they finally found somebody who, kind of knows what they're talking about. Okay,
so the whole cancer thing, you're attributing at least part of the cause of this to radiation and EMF, is this?
There's lots of peer-reviewed research showing a link between electronic pollution and cancers. I mean, there's an enormous amount of research on radiation. Now, of course, we have to make this clear as well, is that governments set exposure standards, which they look at a certain amount of research, make an opinion, and then set a level which works for a health perspective and, not to be ignored, an economical perspective. And so, for example, if you don't mind me elaborating, magnetic fields, which is something produced by current flow. And so if we just imagine the big transmission lines, the big walkers, everybody frowns at when you look at, should I buy a house that's really that close? These cables have got a lot of current, therefore there's a magnetic field. And there's quite a lot of research, especially on these transmission lines, in terms of what sort of health effects, where do we see childhood leukemia and those sorts of things. Now, in many countries, the allowable exposure limit set for magnetic fields is 1,000 milligauss. And that was basically determined on thermal properties. What that means is that at that level, your tissue starts to warm up, as in you're now being cooked.
Right.
And then the decision was made, well, if that doesn't happen, everything else should be perfectly fine. Which is, of course, ludicrous, because there'll be many biological changes before that happens. There's other countries that don't follow that viewpoint that many other governments have. But personally, I think once a decision has been made for a certain exposure standard, once you say, hey, if you're exposed to 600 milligauss, that's perfectly fine, and we've allowed you to build a house at a certain distance from these things, it's very difficult to now, years later, go and say, well, we kind of made a mistake. It should be far less. And now we've got all these houses that are being exposed to way too much. And now we've got an economical problem. So it's something you can't really go back on. But and let me stress this as well, the exposure to magnetic fields is not a problem in most houses. But to put it in perspective, 1,000 milligauss is the allowable exposure limit. Multiple research in childhood leukemia shows that there's issues above 4 milligauss. Melatonin, which is a hormone which is prevalent at night, is kind of your mop-up crew, cleans things up, identifies free radicals. That has a natural anti-cancer action, and that function research shows seems to be affected between 2 and 12 milligauss.
Okay, and the allowable limit?
1,000 milligauss. Okay. And if you'll allow me, in fertility research, an exposure of 1.6 milligauss showed a doubling of the chances of sperm abnormalities.
Okay, on that, just cell phones, right? Yeah. I've got a personal phone and an on-call phone that I have to carry as well. Quite often I've got them both in my front pockets. I'm walking around. How are they, do you think, affecting then me and possible sperm counts, etc.? Other things also?
Well, rather than give my opinion, there was this research done by a fertility clinic, and I have to be a little bit flexible on the numbers, but I think there was about 600 men in this study. So it was a decent sample, ironically. Basically, they asked a simple question. They said, how much exposure to a mobile phone do you have? 0 to 2 hours, 2 to 4, 4 to 6, 6 to 8 hours per day. Now let's hope that that's not talk time, right? As in how many hours a day are you close to a phone?
Yep.
And then they compared that with the sperm samples they had on file, and it matched perfectly. The more exposure, the worse the samples were. So the thing to realize with a phone, especially smartphones, because they're always checking the weather and updates, and it's always this data that keeps going on, where the older phones just really were nasty when a call was happening, where the smartphones are far more active. They produce a radio frequency radiation signal or high frequency radiation signal, very similar frequency to what's used inside a microwave oven. And then besides that, it's also an electrical device. So it will have a magnetic field as well.
Okay.
So putting your phone on flight mode is a great idea to avoid that radio frequency radiation. So if you use your phone as an alarm clock, you should at least put it on flight mode. But it should also be at arm's length, because if you put it under your pillow, it's still an electrical device that's working. It's still too close.
Yeah.
And also, you should never charge your phone whilst it's sitting on your bedside table, because the charger will produce a magnetic field. The wire to the phone will have an electric field. I mean, the wiring inside your walls are already a big problem.
Okay.
But yeah, so you have to be careful with phones, and if you take anything away from this, these things have got to come out of your pockets.
Yeah. Look, it is something I'm aware of. Every now and again I look down and I go, I've got 2 phones here. This can't be good. So surely, charging your phone at night, I know, is a common thing. It's a battle we've had with a teenager trying to get his phone out from under his pillow, being charged at night, and because they're always connected and there's always Snapchats and things coming in, and as a teenager, there's, I guess, so much pressure to be locked into this. So you're saying
get a habit of whatever, set a time, and I know families where say 10 o'clock the Wi-Fi goes off and it's family time. None of this sitting on the couch with the whole family and everybody staring on a screen in front of them.
Sure. Okay, now Wi-Fi, is that also an issue? Most people now have a Wi-Fi type router thing in their house.
Yeah. And then there's so much technology that now utilizes that. What's coming is that you'll be able to get sensors for your plant pots, which are solar powered, have Wi-Fi in it, and you might be at work at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and your app will tell you that plant pot number 12 needs nutrients and water, right? And it all uses Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Wi-Fi is just another signal of radio frequency radiation, very similar to cordless phones, which is also a problem. Now, again, this is all perfectly fine according to government standards, but there is research to show that these signals trigger the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight and flight response. And so blood pressure goes up. The digestion is halted because your body's getting ready for that tiger that's lurking around the camp. And so it's something that constantly harasses you. So we would recommend anybody to move away from wireless technology altogether. But it's almost like drinking Coca-Cola or something.
Yeah.
There's withdrawal symptoms taking somebody's Wi-Fi away. So
Sure.
if you just sleep time is the most important thing. That's what matters. So
Okay.
if at night you can turn that thing off or put a timer on it that even without you thinking about it, at 12 o'clock it cuts the power and it turns it back on at 8 in the morning, that would be a wonderful thing to already do in your own house.
Okay, all right. So we'll get to that in a second. One other thing I just want to mention is smart meters then. There's been a bit of controversy around here. I've definitely heard people talking about smart meters. They work on a similar frequency, I think, don't they, to cell phones or something? Is that right? Or
yeah, similar, or even a router. It's kind of all in that same family. Now, yes, they're not good to have on your house, in our opinion. They use radio frequency radiation to transmit your usage data, and that's a whole debate in itself about privacy issues that you could basically see when a coffee machine comes on or a washing machine runs. And where we're going with the smart grid is that you'll be offered particular energy plans. Some will be cheaper, some will be more expensive. And by you signing up for the cheap one, you agree not to use a certain amount of power, let's say during the week. And so you might have friends visiting on a hot Wednesday morning, you turn the air conditioning on and your smart meter will turn it off for you because that's not what you signed up for. So that's the whole issue. But from a radiation perspective, it's just like a router. So we would have concerns about the sympathetic nervous system, blood pressure, all these sorts of things. But the meter itself, there's an issue with they can produce dirty electricity, which ends up that your wires radiate a frequency in the kilohertzes. So it's something you'd rather not have on your house, in our opinion. Right? And there's been lots of action with the smart meters. I know in Victoria they tried to. In Melbourne, tried to push it like it was mandatory. The power companies were mandated that they have to install it, but the users weren't mandated that they had to accept one. So there was this clash going on, and their action groups were formed. And these are also available in New Zealand. I'm sure there's a stopsmartmeters.co.nz. And because these things were introduced so rapidly, and so many people got them so quickly, there was this increase of exposure, and people started noticing, you've got ringing ears and headaches as well, which are the most common symptoms we hear about of people that have had a smart meter for typically about 3 weeks. They start noticing these things. And so it's very similar to a cordless phone, but the cordless phone was introduced far more gradually.
Right.
Your neighbors had one, and you thought, that's kind of a good idea. Maybe 6 months later, you had one. But these smart meters all kind of came at the same time. So because of the action that has happened, there's more awareness. In Australia, for example, in different states, they're now making it optional because of the backlash that it had. But there's a publicly funded documentary on this subject. It's called "Take Back Your Power." For a couple of dollars, you can watch that online, or you can buy a DVD. And I recommend anybody wondering about a smart meter to watch a documentary.
Okay.
It's very interesting.
Take back your power?
Take back your power.
Okay, all right. So, it's all sounding a bit gloomy. What are some practical steps that you would recommend people take then if they're worried about this for a start?
That's right. Well, some people ask, listen, this stuff is everywhere now. What's the point? You can't get away from it. And it is almost quite true. Luckily, again, coming back to that, the way our body works is that our bodies repair at night. And at night, you're in your bedroom. And regardless if you're home owning or renting, you have a large amount of control about what you're exposed to at night. And so we would argue, forget about the 16 hours of exposure during the day, to some extent. Focus on that bedroom first. And so there's lots of things little things you can do during the daytime, and I'd love to point some out.
Sure.
But the fundamental things is what happens in the bedroom, and the internal wiring is the most common problem. 95% of bedrooms have this constant electric field exposure, which we assess for, and we figure out which circuits they're there. And you will need some help to address that, but it's no biggie. If your roof leaked, you'd have a roofer there tomorrow to fix it, and to some extent your house leaks radiation as well. So that's more fundamental, little things that people can already do themselves that you can do today. Be conscious about this Wi-Fi router, and that you don't want that thing blaring all night long. cordless phones, I mean, they are very handy, but most cordless phones are continuously broadcasting 24 hours a day when there's also no call going on. There is cordless phones, many from Switzerland, where there's people are more conscious about this. These are phones that when you put them on the charger, on the base, they stop communicating. So only when the call is active, they become active. So that would be a big improvement. Within the energy saver light bulb family, non-dimmable LEDs are the light bulbs that produce the least amount of dirty electricity. So, if you have a favorite reading light that is sitting next to your favorite chair and you've got one of those twisty-turny, fluorescent lights, I would urge you to go and get a non-dimmable LED bulb and change that over. I think that's, a couple of things to maybe go on. And we're doing this talk tonight in Nelson. And this is the reason why I'm here, just to support our new consultant that's starting up here in Nelson, Victor. And we're doing a talk. We did a talk yesterday for doctors and health practitioners and people from the building industry that came. And tonight is general public. And we're educating a lot about this radiation thing, things you can do. And we explain kind of the approach of creating that healthy bedroom, which I don't want to make this a sales pitch, but we found mattresses to be a big issue in that bedroom as well. So we've actually been making our own mattresses for the last 25 years.
Okay.
We'll discuss those and have those there on display as well.
Okay, so where and when is that? It's in Nelson tonight?
Yeah, 6:30, and it's in Innsbruck Church.
Innsbruck Church?
Yeah, and our website is en.geovital, GEOVITAL.
Okay. Well, thanks for your time. Just quickly, if you're thinking of purchasing a home, obviously, I think you mentioned you can test and stuff.
Thank you for asking that. If there's anything that I'd love people to take away from just listening to this interview, is that transmission lines, yes, we all kind of know and feel that there might be something not quite right with those, but also the local distribution lines, that are lines running up and down your street every night, the ones that are maybe above the street, also the ones that are underground. These can produce magnetic fields, and of course they'll be under the government limits, but there are homes which are exposed to these levels where research shows there is concern. And so if you are looking to purchase a home, if you're buying or renting, these magnetic fields, most of the times these can't be fixed. We can't shield against those, for example. And so if you or any of your family is house hunting, you should purchase a relatively quality Gauss meter, which is a meter that measures magnetic fields in milligausses, and expect to pay between about $300 to $500 for a meter like that. And you should take that to every open for inspection that you're going to, and you should measure that. And we talked about those milligausses and 1,000 milligauss being the acceptable limit. Well, basically 1 milligauss and up is where all the bad news starts. The consensus is in our industry that if you're looking for a house, ideally you would want to see 0.3. Now, be it 0.4, 0.5, that'd also be okay. Do keep in mind it fluctuates. It can go up during the night or lower. But you want to basically look for a house, and your aim is 0.3 or less.
Okay.
And if you think you found a winner, we can help you with the other issues. But that magnetic field is important to avoid at all costs, because we have to put our hands in the air, and most of the time we can't help you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Patrick from GeoVital, for joining us. Just if people want more information, it's obviously tonight, Innsbruck Church, 6:30, and a website maybe?
The website, and there's lots of information and articles, is en, as in English, en.geovital, GEOVITAL.com.
Thank you very much for your time this morning. I hope it all goes well, and you've given me plenty to think about.
Thank you for inviting us, Matt. Much appreciated.
Cheers.